We've entered the second half of the 2023 NFL regular season, and winning every single game from here on out is more important than it's ever been before. If you want to make the playoffs, if you want to have a top seed, then you've got to clutch up. Let's see who can get their act together and go on a hot streak to end this season. Let's take a look at my Week 10 game picks. This week has a mixed bag of interesting and not so interesting games. It's a pretty weird 50-50 split. And the first game of the week on Thursday is one of the bad ones. The Panthers versus the Bears. A 1-7 team versus a 2-7 team. Not much to discuss here. Both teams are pretty terrible, but the Bears could be having Justin Fields come back for this matchup, which would be a big-time boost for their offense, and would probably be enough to boost them over the Panthers. This Panthers team just can't protect Bryce Young at all. They've been so mediocre this year, and the Bears, they've been losing close games even without Justin Fields, like in the Saints matchup, so with him, they should be consistent enough to get this W. Although, even though I'm picking the Bears here, if we end up finding out that Justin Fields is not ready to play on Thursday, then I probably would give the edge to the Panthers. I think their offense would do slightly more in like a very ugly contest, but assuming Justin Fields is playing, I'm going with the Bears. Now we head over to Germany, the Colts versus the Patriots on Sunday morning, and oh boy, this is a doozy, and Bill Belichick's coaching job could be on the line potentially if the Pats lose this one. It's like must-win territory for them, not only if they want to salvage their season, but if they want this Belichick era to continue, and to be honest, I don't know if they have what it takes. I'm actually favoring the Colts in this game. They have a lot more momentum. They've been a more consistent, reliable, and competitive team this season. They have Jonathan Taylor back in full form. Gardner Minshew has been doing enough to win games. That Pats defense isn't what it used to be. I don't like how inconsistent they're on the offensive side of the ball. Mac Jones is not to be trusted even against the likes of Gardner Minshew. It probably will be a close game. I don't think the Pats are going down without a fight, but I think the Colts are just the better football team. Next up, starting off on the Sunday afternoon slots, is the Bengals versus the Texans. These two teams have both been relatively hot this season. The red-hot CJ Stroud is coming off the best game by a rookie quarterback literally ever, and he has a chance to prove himself against a really good Bengals team. And they just might have it in them to make this upset possible because of how strong they've seemed to be playing recently. However, the Bengals still are the significantly more skilled football team. This Texans team, they're getting carried by CJ Stroud for sure. They just don't really compare from a talent standpoint. They're like more towards the bottom percentile of the league. And the Bengals have like Super Bowl level players all around. Their defense is going to make things tougher than the Bucs did last week for sure. And the Bengals have been a very hot team. They're on a big winning streak, and I expect that to continue. The Bengals are always a second half of the season type of team, and I think we'll likely see that continue as Joe Burrow gets the best of CJ Stroud. Another interesting game in the 1 p.m. slot is the Saints versus the Vikings, two 5-4 teams, and whoever wins this one could be in an excellent position to make the playoffs this year. If the Saints were to win it, it would be huge for their divisional lead most likely, and the Vikings on the other hand are trying to play catch up to the Lions. They could still surpass them. The Vikings have been on a winning streak as of late. They've turned their season around after a horrible start, and it's going to be interesting to see how Josh Dobbs does now that he's had another week under his belt to learn the system. He could be having Justin Jefferson come back from IR. The Vikings are in a pretty good spot. I think their pass rush is also very respectable. Could give Derek Carr a hard time. And in the end, I do think they're actually going to get the win against the Saints. It's a really hard one to call because the Saints defense is very strong, and Josh Dobbs may actually struggle a lot more this week compared to what we saw, even though last week he didn't even know the playbook. I don't know. I think it's probably going to be an ugly, close game, but the Vikings are a hot team right now, and I trust them a lot, and the Saints have been very mediocre. They didn't look all that great against the Bears last weekend, so I'll take the Vikings. Next, you got the Packers taking on the Steelers, and straight up, I just think the Steelers win this game. It's not even that they're like an amazing team. The Packers just are kind of bad this season, in my opinion. Jordan Love just has not looked right. That Packers offense has struggled big time. Even in that easy game against the Rams, it didn't exactly come pretty for a while, and I think against a Steelers team that is not only healthy in terms of quarterback, but also just have a better defense, that they're going to struggle big time. The Steelers defense has had some excellent performances this season, and I think they're overdue for another one where they really shut down their opponents, and Jordan Love is like the prime candidate to do that against. TJ Watt and those boys are going to make his life a nightmare, and I just don't know how he's going to handle that. The Packers haven't beaten any significant opponents this season, and the Steelers have shown they can be competitive when they're feeling it. So I say with great hesitance in what probably should be an ugly game where there's no offense that the Steelers will win. Anyway, next is the Titans versus the Buccaneers. 2 3-5 teams. Two mediocre teams that have been struggling quite a bit in recent weeks. I think this one could go either way. The Titans, you might argue, have slightly more talent compared to the Buccaneers. You're maybe excited about seeing how Will Levis bounces back. But on the other hand, the Buccaneers during their losing streak have lost a lot of close games, and I think if they are to fix their execution issues even just a little bit, they should probably start winning more matches. I actually have a decent bit of faith in them to turn this season around and maybe be in the hunt for the playoffs still. I've liked what I've seen from Baker Mayfield. His defense has let him down recently, and I don't think that's going to happen again against the Titans. This Titans team has been so up and down. They're trusting everything to a rookie quarterback, and I think the Bucs defense is going to do enough to make him struggle slightly more than Baker, and the Bucs are going to get this win. I just don't think the Titans are that good of a football team. They've struggled against a lot of mediocre opponents, and the Buccaneers have been hanging in there week after week, so I'll take the Bucs. Now for one of the most interesting matches of the week, the 49ers versus the Jaguars in that 1 p.m. slot. This is a very interesting match, and there's a lot of implications on both sides. The 49ers are looking to bounce back. They're on a 3-game losing streak right now. Things have not looked pretty. They've scored 17 points in their last 3 outings, all in a row. But on the other side of it, while they're trying to stop the bleeding, the Jaguars have an opportunity to prove themselves against another top-tier opponent. So far, they've shown mixed results against those types of teams, and I think this could be a really good opportunity to prove to the rest of the world that they are legit. The question is, can they do it? Well, I'm of the belief that they're probably going to come up short. The Jags this season have been weirdly inconsistent offensively, and I think the 49ers defense is also overdue for a good performance. They haven't been performing as great as you usually see from them, so this is going to be their bounce back game. Nick Bosa maybe has a solid outing, and then you'd have to imagine that the Niners offense is just going to get it going eventually. They have way too much talent on that side of the football to continue struggling. I think the Jags could probably keep this interesting, but with McCaffrey and with Kittle and with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, I think they'll probably overpower the Jaguars slowly but surely in what could be a pretty fun game to watch. And in that final 1 p.m. slot, we have a really interesting AFC North divisional battle between the Browns and the Ravens. The last time these two played, the Ravens kicked their asses. It just was not close, but the Browns were without their starting quarterback, Deshaun Watson. He's back now, he's healthier, and the Browns dealt with a lot of turnover issues in that matchup, so if Deshaun Watson can just be efficient with the football, this one could be a lot closer. Their defense is extremely stingy. It's putting up like historic numbers that we haven't seen in over a decade. And the Ravens, while they have looked amazing the last handful of weeks, I'd argue that at this point they're overdue for a stinker. Every once in a while they have those, like in the Colts matchup, for example. Sometimes they just don't show up for some reason. And I'm getting the vibes that might be the case here. I think, again, another instance where while the game looks good on paper, it could end up being really ugly. Both defenses are extremely good. Both offenses are prone to making mistakes every once in a while. But I do think I'm going to stick with the Ravens. I think that in general, they probably have the Browns number. Even with a better quarterback, I still think they're just the better overall team. I trust them a bit more. Their run game looks incredible right now. Lamar's doing his thing. So I think the Ravens can edge out like a low-scoring win here, just because their offense is more trustworthy. Moving on, we got a battle of red teams, the bird battle as well, the red bird battle, the Falcons versus the Cardinals. The Falcons lost a really tough matchup to the Vikings last weekend, where they continue to piss off fantasy owners worldwide for not utilizing Bijan Robinson correctly. Overall, though, their offense did look rather smooth. It seems that adding in Taylor Heineke over Desmond Ridder was a really smart idea, and they're playing a Cardinals team that is on a massive skid right now. However, the Cardinals activated Kyler Murray, and he is set to make his season debut. He's returning a bit earlier than I thought he would. He might be extremely rusty. In fact, you might even count on it. But I actually am gonna pick the Arizona Cardinals to win in an upset. They are very overdue for a win this season. They've been competitive for most of the season in most of their matches, I'd argue. They have a fire under themselves constantly. They never go down without a fight. And with Kyler Murray there with a boost at quarterback, they might be able to sneak out a win against a Falcons team that is decent, but by no means amazing. I don't know, maybe I'm a fool for doing this, but I just get this feeling that the team is really going to rally around Kyler. They're going to want to win this game for him because it's been so long since he's played. That ACL injury really ruined everything for him and this team. And just having a good quarterback again is going to feel really good. Those wide receivers are going to go out there and play their best. And, you know, the Falcons deserve to lose for that misuse of Bijan and for their coach really saying some questionable things a lot of the time. I think they deserve to lose until further notice, until their coach decides to change his mindset. So let's go with the Cardinals, baby. Then we have another really fun matchup, the Lions versus the Chargers. Two teams with high-octane offenses looking to really solidify their positioning in the playoff standings. The Lions are trying their best to make sure the Vikings are able to surpass them. A win here could put them up to 7-2 and put them in a really good spot for the NFC North and the playoff race. However, the Chargers at 4-4 desperately need a win. They just came off a big matchup versus the Jets where their defense really showed out. It's going to build up their confidence and lead to an epic showdown here. I think this could go one of two ways. Either it's going to be a low-scoring close game or a shootout. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think these teams are just meant to play each other close. Jared Goff versus Justin Herbert could be an absolute battle. Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Keenan Allen. I think both teams are going to go absolutely crazy with the run and the pass game. There's not going to be a lot of defense here. And in a shootout, in those really tight games, usually you favor the team that isn't the Chargers. No offense, Chargers fans, but these are the types of games that you usually lose. And the Lions, I think they really need to prove themselves after, you know, the last challenge being the Ravens and them getting blown out by them. And I think they're going to show out and show the world why they truly are legit. Also being played in the 4 p.m. slot, unfortunately, is the Giants and the Cowboys. Oh my god, we don't even need to talk about this one. I mean, the Giants are without their 2 QBs. Tommy DeVito's their freaking starter. The Cowboys are one of the best teams in football. This game needs no discussion, no analysis. We know that the Giants stand no chance and that they're better off tanking in the draft, getting the best pick possible. And this game will in all likelihood be done by the end of the first quarter. The Cowboys defense is going to destroy Tommy DeVito, force a bajillion turnovers, and you won't even have to watch it. You know what's going to happen. Finishing up the 4 p.m. games is the Commanders versus the Seahawks. The Commanders have a chance to move up to 500 and potentially keep their names in the playoff race with a win here, but I don't really know if they have what it takes against Seattle. Like, they've been doing enough to stay afloat. They've shown some great performances against the Eagles and whatnot, but they also have shown some ugly games, like in their loss against the Giants, and the fact that they nearly lost to a Patriots team that they have no business losing to as well. They're just too inconsistent to trust, even though Sam Howell seems to be a respectable quarterback. Their defense just isn't as strong after making the trades, and the Seattle Seahawks are just a better football team. They got blown out against the Ravens. They're going to want to get that sour taste of defeat out of their mouths, and I fully expect them to, as just a more high-octane offense with more potential. This Seahawks team should be making the playoffs this season, and this could be a solid gimme game for them, so I think Seattle will persevere. And on Sunday night, another interesting game that could decide the playoff race, the Jets versus the Raiders. This one's pretty interesting, as the Jets seem to capitalize on those opponents that are inconsistent. The Raiders are definitely one of those teams. The Jets defense wins them a lot of games by themselves, and I get the feeling it might be one of those situations again here. The Raiders looked really good against the Giants last week, and I think in general they just have more energy now that Josh McDaniels is out of there and they fired his butt. But with a rookie quarterback against this Jets defense, I really don't know how things are going to go. Yes, he's looked better than Jimmy G. He's got good help with Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and whatnot, but this is a challenge he has not had to face yet, and I really don't know how much confidence you can have in a young guy when this Jets defense has been so ferocious this entire season. I don't think it's going to be the prettiest game in the world. That Jets offensive line is terrible, and Max Crosby is probably going to have a field day, but I think that over time it's going to be one of those games where the Jets edge it out, just because their offense maybe has a bit more potential to move the ball down the field. Maybe Zach Wilson finally connects with Garrett Wilson in the end zone again. I'm not expecting much from this one, but I do think the Jets are going to take it because of their defense, and they're going to elevate themselves to 5-4 and put them in a decent spot to make the playoffs. And closing out the week on Monday night is the Bills versus the Broncos. Now, usually I wouldn't even bat an eye at this type of game. I mean, the Broncos are so incredibly mediocre. The problem is that the Buffalo Bills, especially in recent memory, have just not looked right. They're 5-4, and pretty much since week 5, they've really been up and down, losing to opponents that they really shouldn't, and almost losing to opponents that they really shouldn't as well. I really don't like where they're at as a football team right now. You can see it with their expressions. They're not confident. They seem very lost, and that could be dangerous against this Broncos team. The Broncos have been competitive in a fair bit of their contest. Russell Wilson looks much improved compared to last year. If the Bills don't come in ready, they're going to leave getting punched in the mouth for sure. But I think I am going to trust them to squeak this out. Maybe it'll be an offensive showdown where Russell Wilson really pushes them to their limits, but you can never trust that Broncos defense in the clutch for the most part. They've been very bad this season defending against the pass, and the Bills every once in a while have that offensive explosion after some big-time struggles. It seems like they're overdue for such a thing, so for this week, I'll trust in the Bills. Moving forward, I don't know how I'll feel about them, but for now, I'll give them my trust. And that actually wraps up the games for the week. There's only 14. We have a couple of teams on a bye. So we'll see how week 10 goes. Like I said, some of these matchups just seem absolutely terrible, but then you have others that could be serious bangers. We have some divisional battles, some matchups with two top-level teams here and there. I think week 10 is going to be a fun week in a mixed bag. Hopefully it delivers. Let me know what you think of my picks down in the comments below and who you think is going to win in week 10. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more in the future, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for future NFL content.